Welcome to Game Savers Podcast, everybody. My name is Tony Morris, and today I'm joined by my co-host
Justin
Me,
Mills.
Wayne.
Wayne Donaldson and Justin Mills. You heard it right there. This will be your next-gen gaming podcast for all news, reviews, previews, impressions, analyses, and roundtable discussions involving past, present, and future games. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment below, leave a review, and find our channel links in the description as well. Today we have a very special episode as we say farewell to the current generation of games and celebrate our favorite games from this generation, stretching back over the last 7 or 8 years. Obviously, I have co-host Wayne with me. We've got Justin as well. Justin, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into the games and the gaming industry.
So, like many of you, got into gaming very, very young age. Played on the PS1, so a little while ago now. And then from there, decided, you know what, this is the not only the hobby for me, but also the career. So, decided to become a 3D artist about 8 years ago, and have been studying and recently got into the industry myself. So I'm working on at the moment mobile games at a studio in Melbourne, Australia. So I'm working remotely with coronavirus.
How about that? And how long have you been doing it remotely?
At the moment now, like 4 weeks. So I'm pretty fresh in. Like it's all been very kind of new to me, but fast paced and just loads of fun. Really, I enjoy the remote work.
Excellent. All right. Well, when the games start releasing, we're going to have you back on, and we'll be sure to have some specials.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, maybe they'll make the top 10 as well. You never know.
You never know. After seeing Among Us and Fall Guys take off, anything can happen at this point.
Yeah, that's right.
So with that as well, again, we're here to celebrate this entire generation of consoles, including some PC games as well. Basically, how this is going to work is we all have a list of our top 10 favorite games with some honorable mentions. With that, we have sent our list to a third party. We don't know each other's favorite games from this generation. We haven't seen each other's top 10. We've had them verified, so we made sure there was no crossover or we don't, talk over each other on a certain one. But with that as well, I think it should be interesting to see what we've picked out of the top 10 from all of these consoles in this generation. So without further ado, are there any ground rules I'm missing here before we get started?
I think we just agreed that no remasters, basically. So if a game launched on Xbox, the OG Xbox, or the 360, or PS2 or 3, and then got remastered, the likes of BioShock, that sort of thing, that would be a nope. We're not looking for those games. We're looking for games that launched either on the 7th, is it 7th or 8th? Either way, the PS4 and Xbox One and Switch, or PC games that came out around that period. So November 2013 up until now.
Yep, absolutely. And with that as well, we'll talk about our honorable mentions and our top 10 games here in just a second. But before we get started, let's take a look back into 2012, 2013, somewhere in there, and talk about how these games launched. We'll talk a little bit more about what it was like when they came out, our memories of when they came out, if we got it upon release, and then we'll dive into our top 10 countdown from here. So when did these consoles launch? The Xbox One came out on November 22nd, 2013, and the PlayStation 4 was just 1 week before that on November 15th, 2013. We're counting the Nintendo Switch in here as well, even though it's kind of off cycle. It came out on March 3rd of 2017. But to give you an idea of what some of these console titles looked like when they came out, just in case, obviously, we're hot on the heels of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X coming out here in just a month. To give you an idea of what some of the launch titles were 7-8 years ago for these consoles, let's start with the Xbox One. We had Dead Rising 3. We had Forza Motorsport 5, Killer Instinct, Need for Speed Rivals, Rise, Son of Rome. Who can forget that? Any opinions on those before we go over to PlayStation 4?
Son of Rome, the Rise game, way better than it got credit for. An absolutely gorgeous looking game as well. I think everyone honed in on the fact that it was short. Just it got slated because of the length of the game. And I think sometimes that's really unfair, especially for a launch title, because I think the development cycle for games that are getting pushed to come out whenever a new console's coming out, you can't make a 40-hour game, I really enjoyed Son of Rome, and I think we would have got more games in that series if it hadn't have been so harshly critiqued.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin, any thoughts on there before we go into PlayStation 4?
I think he's spot on. I didn't personally play the Xbox release games, but he's spot on there about the the deadlines before a game comes out on the console, particularly for a launched release. Like 100% spot on. Yeah, it does sound like it got unfairly treated, but I guess I have to play it to find out.
Yeah, personally, Rise Son of Rome for me, I remember watching E3 that year, and Xbox's presentation featured a lot of Rise Son of Rome, and me and my younger brother were sitting in our basement on the couch watching this, and I thought, whoa, that game looks so cool. But I'll be honest, when it came out, I was one of those that did rake it over the coals and was extremely disappointed. I felt like that game had a lot of tunnel vision to it. Maybe it was just the expectation for me that it was going to be this huge open world battle simulator. And I don't know if it was really pitched that way. I can't recall, but I just remember kind of hoping for that deep down. I was thinking back to the days of Spartan Total War on the Xbox and the PlayStation 2. I don't know if anybody out there remembers that game. But I was kind of expecting those vibes from it. And the fact that it was kind of on rails, to me was just hard to get past. And I think I played through it once and just haven't come back. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think you're right. Maybe if it didn't have such a low opinion, we would have got some more of those. And I personally wouldn't mind seeing a lot more games from that era.
I think a lot of games suffer from that, the sort of expectation versus reality. I mean, No Man's Sky, which we've touched on before, people expecting this incredible game, and yeah, it was doing new things, but it wasn't what people thought it was gonna be, and that ended up having an impact on how it was received.
Absolutely. The PlayStation 4 as well, it had a bunch of different launch titles as well. Some of these were crossover that came out on both consoles, but Knack was a console exclusive at the time. Who can forget that? Killzone, Shadowfall, Call of Duty Ghosts, Warframe, which ended up blowing up all over the place, especially on PC with Steam. Battlefield 4, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag. I believe it had launched just a month prior on the older consoles, the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, but it did get a launch title release on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And Flower. And I don't mean flour like the kitchen ingredient, but the game. So did anybody get a chance to play any of those titles?
Black Flag would have been a launch title for me on Xbox, and after playing Assassin's Creed 3 and Unity, I was wavering. I was losing interest in that series. Black Flag was a return to form for me. I thought it was outstanding. Yeah. So out of all of those games on that list, Black Flag to me is top of the pile.
Yep. Still one of the favorite Assassin's Creed games to this date.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. That's the one I had as well on PS4. 100%.
Really?
Yeah. Amazing game.
Wow. Do you guys remember the sea shanties? And I mean, there were so many different elements of that game that were so new for Assassin's Creed at the time. And
yeah,
I want to say at the time, Assassin's Creed was feeling a little stale. You'd had 1, 2, and 3. I think you had Unity or Brotherhood. I might be getting those mixed up. Sorry. But this had come out and just absolutely blew the door open for that series. It was incredible.
Yeah, you'd had Revelations just before that, right?
Yeah.
Three in Revelations before that. But
Unity was the other one. Unity was the one set in the French Revolution. And again, characters not particularly interesting, same as Assassin's Creed 3. And I think it was Revelations, or I can't remember where Desmond's story ended. But to me,
Revelations.
I thought maybe? That. Yeah, I thought that. I thought it was the end of Revelations. After that, the story that was going on in the modern day era, it was so uninteresting. I don't even remember any of it. I remember that even in Black Flag, I loved Black Flag, but even in that one, the modern day was like this video game development company, and you were like testing video games, and it was just like, just give me the pirate story. That's what I want. I want those stories in the Animus, the stuff that's happening outside of it. Didn't care about. Still don't.
Excellent. With that as well, so we also have the Nintendo Switch coming out in 2017. That had a unique launch lineup. There wasn't a lot to it, but some of the highlights include Shovel Knight, 1-2 Switch, Just Dance 2017. But it did come with an absolute gem in the form of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Mm-hmm. Who can forget that game?
I actually played that on Wii U.
Oh, yeah, it did come out of the Wii U as well, didn't it?
Yep. Yeah, it's a sad story. It's a really sad story. It came out a month before Mass Effect Andromeda. So I rushed my way through Breath of the Wild, knowing that Andromeda was coming. And that didn't work out too well, because Andromeda was Trunks. Absolute trunks.
What does trunks mean for the people here?
It's rubbish. Awful. Dung.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's that's a shame, man, to put Zelda to the side for that. How dare you?
Yeah. So I think I'll replay it. I'll replay it at some stage and just take my time and enjoy it, because we do have it on the Switch now. So it will get another run at some stage.
Excellent. Sales year to date for all of those. So before we dive again into this top 10, let's take a look at how all these sales are positioned for all of these games right ahead of the next generation release. The Xbox One to date, as of September, from Statista.com, has sold 48 million units. On the opposite side of that, you have the PlayStation 4. And again, all these stats are from Statista.com. The PlayStation 4 has sold 113 million units. That's more than twice as much as the Xbox One. And then you have the Nintendo Switch, which came out 3 years ago and has already sold 55 million. Now, while that may seem like a lot, that's still half of the original console sales that came out in the Wii's console lifetime, the original Wii. But yeah, wow. Who would have thought there was such a huge discrepancy between the sales for the Xbox One and PlayStation 4?
Yeah.
Not to fanboy either way, but that's huge.
Yeah, that is a surprise. I mean, I think most people know that the PlayStation 4 did, comfortably win on the sales, but to over double it is pretty mad. And Nintendo Switch did really well. It's kind of living up to a big, like a high set bar, right? With the Wii, it's a very acclaimed console, and it did so well on sales. So it's kind of hard to judge how well that really does in the grand scheme of things with 55 mil. But
yeah. I will say one thing I thought was really unique about this generation too, and we can kind of open this up to really anything. But one thing that really stood out to me was the fact that we got rid of a lot of gimmicks this generation. By that I mean I look back at the PlayStation 3, the PS3 Home, if you remember that, like a walking around life simulator. On the Xbox 360, you had the Kinect. The KINECT, that was a very unique thing at the time that wasn't received.
I was going to say garbage, but yeah, unique. Unique.
Yeah, we could go with garbage too, because I absolutely hated the thing. But yeah, the Kinect was that was ugly. And again, we're just getting away from things like that, it seems like, and really just starting to focus on the games, which is exciting. I think all of these have in common the virtual reality component. Whether that be on PC or the consoles. I don't see that being marketed too hard ahead of the next generation release, but it's still good to know it's there. Probably will be in some capacity, I'm sure.
I think the thing with VR is that it's not a gimmick. Kinect was a gimmick. The initial wave of motion controls was a gimmick. It didn't really add anything. It wasn't working. It didn't give us something of value, whereas VR really, really does. You will not be immersed in a game the way you are with VR ever. It's. I know it's still early doors, especially for people who are only on the PSVR headset like myself. It kind of feels like a beta, but it's so good. It is just so good that I don't think it's going away. I think it's maybe not landing as quickly as we thought it would. It's maybe not growing as quickly as we thought it would, but I don't think VR is going away anytime soon. Whereas Kinect just died a death,
Thankfully, it was put to rest.
Yeah.
With that, what are your guys' thoughts on, obviously it's been 7 or 8 years. That's such a long time in our life. I've gone through college, had multiple jobs since then. A million things have happened. And to see these evolve the way they have from where they were pre-release, the hype train when we all had our little Xbox 360s and our, Nintendo Wii U, the PlayStation 3 at the time. How do you feel about just the entire state of this generation from the gaming standpoint, the console hardware itself, even the operating systems, anything? Any thoughts there?
Before I done my top 10 for this podcast, I had a very, very low opinion of this generation. And it's only because I'm comparing it to the previous one. To me, 360 and PS3 was a golden era of gaming. Some of the games that came out on those consoles were the best I've ever played. I'm talking about the Arkham series, the Mass Effect series, BioShock, Dead Space. I could keep going. I loved so many games on that console. Gears of War. And then on the PS3, we got the start of stuff like Uncharted and The Last of Us. Naughty Dog just absolutely blew us away that generation. And I don't think this generation really followed up with it, especially even in terms of numbers. If you look at we had 3 Bioshock games on the 360 PS3. We didn't have a single new one this generation. We had 3 Mass Effect games, but we only had 1 this generation. 3 Arkham games on the 360 PS3, only 1 on this generation. There was so many games, and I don't know if it's because games are getting bigger and harder to develop that we're getting less of them, but it just feels like developers didn't deliver this generation anywhere near as much as they did on the previous one. So to me, I can't help but be a little bit negative towards this generation, but it's purely because I'm comparing it to 360 and PS3.
Yeah, that was a high bar to follow. Justin, what about you? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would just to chime off what you said there. With a lot of the big names being released on the PS3 and the Xbox 360, it seems like they just carried on a lot of those franchises into the next generation rather than creating any new ones. And from that dev perspective, it is a safe, companies like a safe bet when it comes to video games, right? A lot of the time. And to follow up with a sequel, whether it's Uncharted or Red Dead Redemption or less successful franchises, is a safer bet. And it feels like they took more risks with the PS3 and the Xbox era, the Xbox 360 era. They just took those more risks and it paid off.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would have to kind of reiterate what Wayne said on only getting, one of some franchises during this generation. Myself being a huge Halo fan on the Xbox, I was kind of disappointed with Halo 5. To be honest, being just a mega fan, I'd even say, of the series, I was disappointed with it. I can't even tell you the names of some of the characters that were in Halo 5. And the fact that we only got one of them, I don't know, again, if that's due to development time. I don't know if that's because Halo 5 just wasn't received as well as we thought it would be. Or if, they're holding off on that until obviously Halo Infinite's around the corner, it looks like on Xbox. So maybe that's why. But again, I have to wonder if some of these games like the Mass Effect Andromedas of the world flopped so hard that they just said, hey, we're done for this generation. We're tapping out. Thanks for coming by.
Yeah. Another comparison, if you go further back, if you look at the Grand Theft Auto series, I mean, if you were a GTA fan, PS2 was an amazing era. You got GTA 3, you got GTA Vice City, and you got GTA San Andreas, all in the period of a single generation.
Yeah.
And then we come to 360, PS3, and we got GTA 4 and GTA 5. So that's down one. We've went from 3 games to 2 games. Then this generation, we just got 1. And now we're getting told we're getting a remaster of that for the next one. Yeah, it just feels like, I know that it's not always quantity over quality, but it feels like there's a decline in both. I personally don't think that any of the modern GTA games comes close to Vice City. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, so. Personally, I love GTA 5. I thought that was a golden one, but the remasters for this generation have been pretty out of control almost.
Yeah. So we're getting GTA 5 on. We got it on 360, then we got an Xbox One. Now we're getting it on the next generation as well, Series X and PS5. It's just like, come on, man! How much GTA 5 do we really need? And it's obvious. It's because of GTA Online is a cash cow.
I'm guilty. I think I bought GTA 5 probably 3 or 4 times now. I bought it on the 360, the Xbox One, and I know I bought it on PC as well. I might even be missing something in there, but I just keep buying this game, and I don't even think I play it all the way through. But it's another example of games being re-released, and I don't know if the developers really care if I'm playing it, but I'm definitely buying it every time it comes out. So maybe I need to stop doing that. Other thoughts as well. I would say the online component of all of these consoles has been really interesting. To see, the Xbox when it launched in 2013, the Xbox One, I thought the interface was absolutely horrendous. It was slow. It was clunky. I was still in love with the Xbox 360 old school interface where it was those little slide tiles from left to right. I don't know. Yeah. Yep. Dashboard. And I was kind of disappointed in that at first, but I will say Microsoft has grown so much on that interface. Even now, when I fire up my Xbox, I'm still so impressed by the updates they've made to the Windows Store. That entire dashboard is almost flawless now. The way you can share videos, talk to friends, get a party going. Those things were really difficult to navigate in the beginning, and I think they've done such a good job of making improvements there.
Yeah.
PlayStation as well. What about them? They've obviously, when I think of them as old reliable, there's been a lot of changes on their front as well, whether it be the storefront, the console itself.
PS Plus, that was a big one for me. Moving from I had PS3, and then moving to PS4, and yeah, it was kind of a big deal,
Yeah, definitely. Man, there's so many different things going on there.
I think PlayStation ought to be pushing their PlayStation Now titles a lot more. I mean, that is clearly a competitor for Game Pass, but they just don't seem as interested as pushing it to the forefront the way that Microsoft have. And I don't really understand why. The service is there, and from what I hear, it's a fantastic service.
This generation, we did get PS Now and Game Pass Ultimate and that whole subscription model to video games where you think of like I don't want to compare it to like a Spotify of music where you just, you subscribe a flat rate a month and you get access to all these, titles.
I think we could do a whole podcast talking about that.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely interesting there. So any last thoughts here on the console generation before we dive? I know we didn't touch on Nintendo a lot, actually. I'm sorry. Maybe we could talk on that because the Switch, very interesting. Obviously, the portability of it. That's an interesting component we have yet to see Sony or Microsoft even attempt to touch. Going from there, man, the Switch, I absolutely love that thing. I don't give that the attention it deserves necessarily on my entertainment center, but I will give it credit. It has been a blast playing some of those games, and you're going to see a couple of them in my top 10.
Yeah, I have to admit, buying a Nintendo console for me is I buy it for Mario Kart, Zelda, Mario, and that's about it. I really don't venture very far beyond the first-party titles because, I mean, Nintendo's software game is on point. Like, they are absolutely nailing it. They're always a wee bit wacky with their consoles. I mean, if you look at the evolution from the Wii to the Wii U to the Switch, while the Switch is a really, really good console and they've got to a good point, it was a really janky route to get there. Like the Wii U is just an odd console, this sort of portable but not portable thing, I think they've settled. I think what we see from going forward from Nintendo is going to be very Switch-esque. But apart from that, as I say, I just get them for the Mario and the Zelda games.
No shame in that. No shame. Well, let's dive into our top 10, ladies and gentlemen. So let me lay out these ground rules. Again, we're going to have our top 10 favorites. We're going to start from 10 and work our way down to 1. I've picked the rotation of who's going first and who's going last as well. We have not seen each other's top 10 at all. We've kept that a secret until today. This is going to cover everything from this generation, including the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and even some PC games in there. We'll rotate around the room, but first we're going to go through and do some honorable mentions from this generation. So, gentlemen, I'm going to pick Wayne to start that off with honorable mentions. Feel free to just list those off.
Okay, I'm just going to blast through these and not talk about them because we'll be here all night. So these are games that I think were good games, thoroughly enjoyed them, but not top 10 material. And I think some of them, it surprised me that some of these are in here. God of War, Jedi Fallen Order. I'm going to, as far as Assassin's Creed goes, I'm just going to bundle them all the Assassin's Creed games of this series and bundle them into a single game because the likes of Odyssey and Origins were very similar. Breath of the Wild, not in my top 10. Rise of the Tomb Raider, Fallout 4, Infamous Second Son, Layers of Fear, What Remains of Edith Finch, Mad Max, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, and Uncharted 4.
How about that? All right. So we know what is not in Wayne's top 10. Justin, feel free to take it from here with your honorable mentions.
Man, I don't have nearly. I have just the 2 honorable mentions, just the 2. One of them is WoW Classic, purely because it's a kind of a re-release, you could say. But I stuck it in honorable mentions just because of how much of a big thing it was for a lot of WoW players. I don't know if you guys play WoW.
But I've doubled, but not played a lot.
Doubled, yeah. But for those of us that have played like me from about 2006, it was such a big deal. So that's there for that reason. And then Overwatch, another Blizzard game. Had a lot of fun playing Overwatch and didn't quite make the top 10 for me.
Wow, absolutely. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll throw out my honorable mentions here, and I'm just going to list them off here while I look at them. Overwatch. Been playing that a lot everywhere. Dying Light, Horizon Zero Dawn, Call of Duty. I'll give it to them this one time. Modern Warfare, Warzone. Just thought it's been absolutely fantastic. Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain. Halo Master Chief Collection. I know it's a remaster, but it did come out recently here on PC, and it's just been an absolutely great addition. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Ghosts of Tsushima, Total War, Warhammer 2, Far Cry's 4 and 5, Mordhau on the PC, can't forget that. Rocket League, Infamous Second Son, Mario Kart 8, and Diablo 3. I guess my last honorable mention might be Skyrim, even though it's been re-released 510 times. I think on every console today, you might even be able to play that on, like, I don't know, your phone at this point. It's absolutely everywhere. But those are our honorable mentions, gentlemen. Any famous last words before we dive into our top 10, starting with 10 and working down to 1?
No, let's do this.
Let's go for it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, number 10, Wayne Donaldson.
Okay. My number 10 is Batman Arkham VR. Two things that I absolutely love in life. Number 1, Batman. Number 2, VR. You put those two things together, you get that game. The first time I played it was actually a trial of it at Comic-Con in, I can't remember if it was Manchester, London. I think it was London. And they had like a demo booth, and they let me have a go, and they put the headset on. It was actually my first time playing a modern VR title. And I was just kind of looking around, and the girl told me, look behind you. And I was able to look the whole way around and see like the entire Gotham City. And that, from that moment, I just knew, right, I need this game. I need to buy this game. I think I actually swore at her. And then as soon as I got it, just those segments where it's, putting the bat gloves on, putting the, using the Batarang, just everything about it was just, we play games and we pretend we're other people in those games. Nothing made me feel like I was someone in a game like Batman Arkham VR did. And I know it got a lot of hate again, similar to Rise Son of Rome, because it was so short. It's like 90 minutes long. I played that game 4 times through before I put anything else on. I just think it takes that Arkham universe, it takes everything that's good about VR, and it understands Batman, and it's brilliant. And that's why it's on number 10 on my list.
How about that? Starting off with a VR game. All right. Justin, number 10.
Wow, yeah, to follow that. My number 10 was Darkest Dungeon. I don't know if you guys have played Darkest Dungeon.
Absolutely.
It's made by a fairly small studio. Picked it up because a friend recommended it, and I was just like, I think I played it like 10 hours straight when I picked it up the first time. The narration, just like such a quirky thing inside the game for me to enjoy it. The narration, if you do get around to playing it, it's just like a weird thing to fall in love with in a game, but it's just so good and it's so immersive. It's such a dark, moody game.
And what kind of game is this again, for those that don't know? Because reminds me a lot of Slay the Spire and similar games to that.
Yeah, it is kind of. It's basically like it's a good like thirst quencher for D&D players, like a dungeon. Dungeons and Dragons. It's like a dungeon crawler, side-scrolling adventure game, and it's just. Yeah, it's. I 100% recommend it. The themes, if you like dark, dingy games, ones where you can swap out characters in a click of your fingers and just swap out your loadout for your characters, it's just great. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, what platform did you play that on?
PC. It's on Steam.
All right, excellent.
And the second one comes out hopefully next year as well. So watch out for that.
Ooh, I didn't realize we were getting a sequel. All right, Darkest Dungeon 2. Yes. Well, all right. My number 10, Red Dead Redemption 2. A little bit further back on the list than I'm sure some people are accredited to seeing, but with that, absolutely loved the game. Definitely top 10 material. I just loved the character Arthur and everybody around him, John Marston and the gang. The game was a little bit slow for a lot of people's taste, and maybe didn't always live up to that GTA 5 expectation. The online component of it I didn't think was the greatest thing, and I really didn't play it a whole lot, but the single player campaign alone for that game was excellent. Loved Dutch, loved Arthur. I felt such a great connection to those characters, and they did a great job of building that immersion and that atmosphere. The whole experience of the game was wonderful. I know the first time it really stood out to me as a wonderful game. You're playing in the beginning, it's a snowy area. Obviously you see the footsteps in the snow, which, in games is pretty common anymore, but it started to impress me at that point. But when you shoot your first deer with a bow and arrow, this might sound weird, but you shoot the deer with a bow and arrow and you track it down. And at this point, it's basically a fetch quest. But I find the deer and it is sitting there and it is shaking. It is bleeding out. It is making these horrible noises. And your job is to put it out of its misery, whether it be with a knife or a gun. And I was sitting there the whole time like, oh my gosh, what is going on? I felt so much emotion for this poor animal. And, and to me, that game just hit such a home run on so many emotional levels. There were a million other great moments in the game. And if you haven't played it already, check it out. Red Dead Redemption 2, played it on the Xbox One and on the PC. But that's my top. That's my number 10. So we're going to go back around the room here to Wayne for number 9.
Number 9, Doom 2016. Honestly, never been a big fan of the Doom series leading up to this. I've played a bunch of them. Think they're okay as games. Doom 2016 is one of the most intense games that I have ever played. The way that it forces you to play in just such a frantic manner is just not like any other games that I generally play. And I don't even exaggerate. I couldn't play the game for more than an hour at a time because I was so tense. Like I was getting pains in my shoulders. I was that tense playing this game. So it was like 1 hour at a time and then set it down and take a break. Thought it was absolutely brilliant. I love seeing games return to form. I love seeing games reinvent themselves. And it had this, it was still true to what Doom had always been, but yet it was modern. And they balanced that perfectly. And the weapons in it are so much fun. You don't stick with a single weapon. There's so many games I've played where you get like a really good sniper rifle, and that's you for the rest of the game. I'm using a sniper rifle or a great assault rifle, and that's you. Constantly switching between weapons because different weapons affect different enemies different ways. There's a tactic in the game where if you're low on health in any other game, you got to run and hide or you got to duck behind something. In this, run towards the enemies and smash them because that will give you more health. And it is so counterintuitive yet so fun. Brilliant game. Absolutely loved Doom.
All right, Doom. Interesting. 2000. That was a wonderful game. The number 9, Justin.
My number 9 is The Hunter: Call of the Wild. Not a particularly conventional one you'd expect to see in the top 10 for someone. I don't know if you guys have played it or anyone that'll be listening, but it's a Steam game, and it does what it says on the tin. It's a hunting game, right? And it's just, for me, when I picked it up, it was something that just, I'd never sort of scratched that itch before. You may not like it, Anthony, if you struggle with the deer in Red Dead Redemption, but maybe avoid it. But no, it's just yeah, it does scratch that niche itch. It's a great value for money game as well. Doesn't cost a lot of money. Has a bunch of replayability in there. Being able to hunt animals and always find like a better trophy animal.
What are some of the more common animals you see through that game?
So you can find gazelle. There's like different categories. So you have like 1 to 1 to 9. So 1 being like ducks and rabbits, and then 9 being like big game like lions, bears, all kinds of things. And you can have your trophy lodges, store your stuffed animals in your own trophy lodge. And it's unconventional, but it's got quite a lot of depth, a lot of DLC if you want that kind of thing. And yeah, me and a bunch of mates have had a lot of fun playing it as well. So yeah.
How about that? All right. Did not see that coming in numbers.
Yeah. I thought I'd throw a few curveballs in there, and more of a recent game for me, but yeah.
Yeah, I see that advertised all over Steam too. I'll definitely have to check that out at some point then. With that, my number 9 is going to be StarCraft 2 on the PC. Now, this had originally come out, I believe, in 2010 or 11, just slightly ahead of this generation. But when the game came out, it was kind of a 3-piece. The first part came out 2010-11. Next one was around 2013. The next part of it was finished in 2015. So to me, it is a current gen game. But absolutely brilliant. It's on the PC. For those of you that aren't familiar with StarCraft Universe, it's a Battle.net game. It's exclusively on PC, made by Blizzard. And, you've got 3 races. It's an RTS game. You got those 3 races that are Zerg, Terran, and Protoss. Ultimately, the objective is to gather resources, build a huge army, and smash it into other people's armies until there's no one left standing. It's got an outstanding campaign. I thought it did a lot of justice for the entire franchise because I started off gaming on PC. As we talked about on the first episode with StarCraft 1 in 1998. So to see this game come out in 2010 or 11 in its full glory and just to get all the attention that it got was wonderful. Spent a lot of time playing that in campaign and multiplayer. So number 9 for me, StarCraft 2. Absolutely brilliant. Moving down to number 8. Wayne, take it away.
Number 8, another PSVR title for me, and it's Astrobot. And it's in there for one simple reason. I can't play that game without smiling. Everything about it, from the music to the art style, to the way it plays, to the little quirks of the character, it just puts a smile on my face constantly while I'm playing it. And what more do you want from a video game, honestly, is for it to just make you happy. There's points and stuff where it's not even part of the game. It doesn't do anything, but I find myself waving at the characters in the game. Like, I'm just so immersed in it. The way it controls is just perfect. I've always had a slight problem with 3D platformers in that you're playing a 3D game, but you are essentially playing it on a flat 2D surface, i.e. your TV or your monitor. So there's always been like a slight problem with depth when it comes to video games of that ilk. But with PSVR, it's fully 3D. You're fully immersed. You don't need little tricks like, the shadow of characters underneath when they're jumping. It's just there. It's beautiful. It is an absolutely beautiful game. It's the right length as well. It's only about 10 hours to play the whole way through. And then if you want, you can collect every little robot throughout the game. Stunning, absolutely stunning game. And again, like all the games we're talking about here, I'd highly recommend it. If you've got PSVR, give it a go. There's a sequel just got announced, and it's not a VR title, which is, I don't get it. I don't get why they're doing that, but it is what it is.
Well, you heard it there, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Wayne's number 8. Justin, number 8 for you.
I went for Assassin's Creed Black Flag. I know you guys mentioned it earlier, and I've been a big fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise up until more recently. I loved the first one, loved Brotherhood, loved Revelations, but Black Flag was just kind of peak for me. I enjoyed the multiplayer as much as the single player. I was a big fan of Assassin's Creed multiplayer. It has that kind of unique game mode for me that I didn't really find elsewhere. Being able to sort of stealth around, be really sort of crafty with my multiplayer tactics and killing other people in the game. And yeah, because of pirate ships. I mean, who doesn't like a semi-open world pirate ship game with assassins? I mean, it was just a great one for me. Just, yeah.
Wow, excellent. All right, bringing it in hot with Assassin's Creed Black Flag and the start of this generation. That was a brilliant game. Still one of my favorites in that series. So for my number 8, I've got Divinity Original Sin 2 on the PC. It's also come to consoles, I believe, recently as well. But I'd sunk a few hundred hours into that through a few playthroughs. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this, it's developed by Larian Studios. Absolutely brilliant. They've taken on Baldur's Gate since the success of this game. It definitely gives you good Baldur's Gate vibes if you're into those old school games. Some Diablo elements as well. It's a lot of point and click and move. Some of it's turn-based elements, some of it's real time. But you can do a lot of crazy things in there. For example, if you get into a battle with your friends, where both of you are targeting against, AI enemies, I'll just teleport my friend into the middle of them, and he will retaliate by turning me into a chicken or something. But it's an absolutely crazy game. It's just got such good reviews all across the board. If you haven't seen it already, I believe it ended up scoring like a 9.6 or a 10, somewhere in that zone from an IGN, and that's its Metacritic as well. So feel free to check that out again. Divinity Original Sin 2. Cannot praise that game enough. I look forward to seeing anything this studio does in the future as absolute gold. So that's my number 8. Wayne, coming around to number 7. And we might
number 7.
And sorry, we might have to pick up the pace here just a tad, but
Sure. I'll be quick, man. My number 7, Batman Arkham Knight. Now, it's not a perfect game. Far from it. I think it's strayed too far from the games that preceded it, Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, I wasn't so keen on it just being open world and not having, I guess, the equivalent of dungeons, even though they aren't dungeons as such. But what made up for it was the story. I thought out of all the Arkham games, although it was the weakest in terms of the game, it was the strongest in terms of the story. I think it had one of the best stories and the best character arcs and the best understanding of who Batman is as a character. The Batmobile sections were awful, though.
It seems like you like Batman, DC or Marvel.
You see, it's not as simple as DC or Marvel.
All right, then.
Here's how it goes. You've got Batman at the top, then you've got all of Marvel, and then you've got the rest of DC.
Oh, okay.
So anything Gotham related, that's me. I'm sold.
Fair enough. All right, Justin, number 7.
Number 7, Gwent's The Witcher card game for me. Another one that you may not have expected to be on there. For those that are unfamiliar, you probably know of The Witcher and The Witcher Netflix TV series. They actually made a card game by the same developers, CG Projekt Red, and it's a better Hearthstone in my opinion. It's just a better Hearthstone. I enjoyed a bit of Hearthstone, got into this, and just haven't played Hearthstone since. Art style is very good, really good actually, with the little animations on the cards, and the game mechanics just win for me as card games go.
All right, Gwent card game. That's a beautiful game. That was definitely one of my favorite elements of The Witcher 3 for sure.
Have you ever considered getting like the physical version of Gwent so that you can actually play it?
I would probably love to have that actually. That sounds right up my street. yeah, all about the art really.
I didn't even know there was a physical version of that.
I didn't either know.
It's not cheap. I think there was very limited edition release of it. So you will not pick it up for cheap. But
I'll take 2 copies.
Similar to there's a card game in Star Wars, the name of which evades me right now, but I keep meaning to get the cards to play that. It's the one that Han Solo lost the Millennium Falcon over.
All right, yeah.
Remember? Well, we'll stick it up on the screen
my mind
somewhere.
So to move on to my number 7, I've got Fire Emblem Three Houses on the Nintendo Switch. Absolutely brilliant turn-based strategy game. I think they did the Fire Emblem series so much justice that it hadn't been getting recently, and this game was a complete comeback to form. Basically, you've got 3 main houses, I believe, and they're all going through and ultimately trying to go through it. And I won't spoil it for anybody that hasn't played it, but they're going through this pretty devastating situation. And it's almost, I don't want to compare it to Harry Potter, but almost a similar setup in the sense that you manage students, you've got classes, things like that. And then you've got all these huge quests and battles and other things and side quests that happen on the side. And it's great. Really, really wonderful story with a lot of twists and turns that you don't expect. As a turn-based strategy fanatic myself, I'd have to say turn-based strategy games and RTS games are my absolute favorite. And this game was phenomenal from that point of view. Definitely in my top 3 of all time as far as turn-based strategy games as well. So for me, Fire Emblem Three Houses, excellent game. That's my number 7. Moving on here to number 6. Wayne, feel free to take it away.
Detroit Become Human. I have been playing Quantum Dream. Hold on, that's not what they're called. Quantic Dream. Yeah, Quantic Dreams games for a while now, since the first one, Fahrenheit. And I always felt like those games were trying to do something and not quite doing it. Like, I always wanted to support them. I always wanted to see developers making these sort of like cinematic, story-based, character-based games. But they always felt clunky. They always felt at times boring. And for me, Detroit Become Human is the first one where they nailed it. It's the first one where they got it right, and the story really is captivating. The characters are great. The world is believable, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. I think that's all I've got to say about it. There's a story there of that developer having a vision for a style of game, and maybe 15 years later, actually managing to deliver on what they were trying to make. And I think that's great. I can't wait to see what they do next.
Wow, that's fascinating. So Detroit Become Human. With that as well, number 6, Justin.
You guys might have heard of this one, Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout.
No way.
Yeah, it made the top 10 for me, and it made number 6. hugely popular at the moment. Season 2 has just come out. For those that don't know, it is incredibly fun, light-hearted party game where it's probably one of the only games I've played where losing is still a lot of fun.
Mhm.
And that's like it's like a big thing. It's a big like latch for the game. You can just never win a game, and it's still a lot of fun. Having that said, I have about 15 crowns at the moment. Just saying. But yeah, like,
what a flex!
yeah, just
man.
a bit of a flex
I
there.
got one. I've
You
got
got
one.
one. Yeah, well, there you go. You know, that's the one. The first one's always the hardest. But no, it's just a great game. The art style's simple but effective. Also, great value for money as well. Not too expensive.
Absolutely. I think we talked a little bit about that in our previous episode, Wayne, with, just the successes, Fall Guys, and everything that's come with it. What a great game, especially here during this COVID quarantine era, right?
Yeah.
So with that, my number 6, I'm actually going to defer on, because when we sent our list to a third party, shout out to Claire. Thank you, Claire. She had sent back that this interferes with somebody else's game that is a little bit higher. So whenever you touch on my number 6, I'll be sure to jump in there as well on why it's on my top 10. But nonetheless, wonderful game. I'm going to defer mine. So we can move on to number 5 for Wayne.
Okay, number 5, another PSVR title, Blood and Truth. I don't know if you guys have played this. It basically there was a demo that came with PSVR that was like a sort of London gangster story, but it was quite short. This takes that idea and it builds it out into a 6 or 7 hour long game. And again, it's a game that has problems. Controls can sometimes be a wee bit unresponsive. It can sometimes be a wee bit awkward. Sometimes you don't know if should I be sitting down playing this or standing up. But when it hits hard, and it is so good. There are points where you're falling off buildings and it feels like you're falling off buildings. There are parts when you're hiding behind a casino slot machine and people are shooting you, and it just again with PSVR, it's the immersion. It feels like you've been there. When I think back to video games that I've played, I remember playing the game. When I think back to PSVR experiences, it's like I remember being somewhere. It is just that good. And the story, the characters, everything just hits, and it's so good. There's good humor in it. It's just, to me, it is the best thing that's come out of PSVR so far. And again, if you've got that headset, get that game. It's not expensive either. I think you can pick it up for £10 or $10 now as well. So, and you will replay it as well, not because you want to get collectibles, but because you want to experience the game again. It's very worth it. Highly recommended.
Check it out. Justin Mills, number 5.
This is a game, again, you may not have played or even heard of, some of you. Nosgoth. Ring a bell for you? Yeah, got some nodding. Yeah, it's dead now. It died 2016, came out in 2014, developed by Psyonix and Square Enix. It's a arena skirmish, vampires versus humans game that branched off from Legacy of Kain, if you guys have heard of that.
Soul Reaver, absolutely.
Yeah. And it was just short-lived, but I put so many hours into that when it came out. I think like 300 or something in the short brief time it was out. But it was great, good fun. Like I wanted a game that was casual, jump in, like arena matches, multiplayer. As you can probably tell, I'm a big multiplayer fan in the games I've mentioned, and that was like up there for me, one of the best multiplayer experiences. Yeah, it's a Steam title as well.
Excellent, but there's no way to go back there and play it now.
It's very sad. Rocket League basically killed it off when Psyonix developed that. It was bringing in so much money. They thought, I guess there's no reason to continue.
We need our servers for Rocket League.
Yeah. The matchmaking wasn't great in the game. There were a lot of problems with it. I'm sort of skimming over this, but there were a lot of problems. But it has a special place in my heart for the time when I played it.
All right, how about that? Well, Justin's number 5. My number 5 is going to be Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on the Nintendo Switch. That has just been an absolute blast of a game to play. I think that roster has expanded to about 80 characters now. I can say I just love playing that game with my family and friends. When I go home, that's still a staple of what we do is playing Smash Ultimate. It's a wonderful game. Regardless of your play style, everything else, there's so many different elements to it. It's a fun party game to play with others. If you haven't checked it out and, let's say you're a fan of fighting games, or if you're not, This has something I think for everybody. It's really easy to pick up, but it also has a really high skill tree depending who you're playing with. So again, feel free to check that out. That is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Moving on to Wayne for number 4.
Marvel's Spider-Man on PS4.
Insomniac, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of Spider-Man games out there, and I don't think anything has got a grasp on the character of Peter Parker, the character of Spider-Man, the stories, the world, the heart of those stories. Nothing has done it as good as Insomniac's Marvel Spider-Man. The recreation of, New York, I know it's not actually New York, is brilliant. The swinging mechanics are just absolutely superb. The villain roster is top-notch. There's twists and turns in the story. The acting is good. It is just top-notch. And not only that, it came at a time where, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I'll play a few games in a row and you start to wonder if you still like video games. And you kind of think, is it me? Are these games dung? Or do I just not like video games anymore? And I was in that mood when I started playing Spider-Man, and I came out the back of it going, no, I still absolutely love video games. And that's an example of why. I played all the DLC, and I'm tempted I'll go back at some stage and do a New Game Plus run of it, because brilliant. I could stick it on and just swing around New York and not do any missions or anything. The side quests as well, like sometimes collectibles in games can be just incredibly tedious and boring. I'm looking at you, Assassin's Creed. But in this, like going around and having to take photographs of all these different areas, and it turns out to be, Avengers Tower or Doctor Strange's house or all these other things that tie in with all these other Marvel characters. Brilliant. Loved it. 10 out of 10.
You've got some photography experience as well, so I'm sure that's a little bit of an extra.
Yeah. Well, the best Assassin's Creed's great for that. Has a brilliant photography mode. Really, really good. I wish more games would kind of stick that in. Really, really smart. I like that.
Absolutely. Moving on over to Justin for number 4. Sorry, are we on 5 or 4? Did I just mess that up?
4.
We are on 4. Yeah,
we are on
right
4.
The first time. Yeah. My number 4 is a game I played with you, Anthony. Mordhau.
Oh man, masterpiece.
It had to be up there on my top 10. Not everyone's top 10, but I was playing Mount and Blade Warband an awful lot. And for people that haven't played Mordhau, it's the multiplayer at least is very similar. Obviously, it's a multiplayer only game, so it doesn't have that campaign aspect if you're looking for it. But as someone that enjoys multiplayer first and foremost, it is just unbeatable in that category. Being able to jump in, casual fighting game that's super intuitive, pick up a bow and arrow, pick up a sword and shield, and just smash people. It just does what it says on tin. It's just great. Yeah, it's got polished graphics, and for someone that works with 3D graphics, it's a bonus for me. And just lots of memes, lots of fun. Yeah, it's a quality game.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because, I think we did spend some time playing that game together on Steam, and to see how that game has just grown exceptionally over the course of the last couple of years is insane. I know it, for me personally, I love those style of games where it's medieval themed, which already hooked me in. Smashing into each other with swords and shields, and the physics behind it were just spot on, kind of similar to a Chivalry Medieval Warfare on Steam. Great game. Mordhau, Mordhau. Feel free to check that out on Steam, ladies and gentlemen, if you're about that. Moving on to number 3. And again, I had to defer on my number 4 here because somebody else has got this in their top 3. I'm not sure which one of you it is, but apparently you've taken both. You've taken my number 4 and my number 6. So I'm looking forward to seeing where it's on your list so we can talk about that. But moving on to number 3 for Wayne.
My number 3 is Resident Evil 7.
There it is. All right. Perfect.
Yeah. Is that your number 3?
6. Yes.
Your number 6. Resident Evil just took an absolute nosedive after the absolute gem that was Resident Evil 4. I still really enjoyed Resident Evil 5, but I appreciate it's not what Resident Evil is about. It was just too far departed from the series. And then Resident Evil 6 was a dumpster fire. It was a mess. They tried to make 3 different Resident Evil games and package it into one, and none of them worked. And then we just got that long dry period of no proper Resident Evil games.
We thought we were never going to see another one.
And then Resident Evil 7 came along and at the same time reimagined what Resident Evil was by putting it into first person mode, but at the same time played homage to the original Resident Evil games. And it balanced it perfectly. And it's probably one of the best Resident Evil games at this stage. What they done with that game was fantastic.
Yeah, and I'll touch on that a little bit as well, because I had that on my number 6 for Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. I played that first through on the Xbox and later on the PC. And what an absolute gem of a game. Like you said, the first ones preceding that, I think Resident Evil 5 and 6, I actually enjoyed both of them, but definitely not on the level I did 4. I love the co-op elements as well in 5 and 6, which, for me and my brother was great. But Resident Evil 7, I remember there was a lot of skepticism when that was first released, the trailer, showing that it was a first-person game. People were like, oh, no, you can't get rid of the, iconic, like, over-the-shoulder third-person view that we've had for ages at this point. And people were pretty pissed about that, to be fair. And I was one of those skeptics. But when I played the demo, where you first go into the house, right? And it's still the first part of the actual game itself. That, to me, was just so absolutely terrifying kind of experience I had never had in a first person game. Everything from the dark corridors to the walls, the characters. I cannot believe how well they knocked these characters out of the park with this game. From Aunt Marguerite, I'm forgetting a couple of them, the son, the old man. They were just absolutely terrifying throughout. There was the big turn with your girlfriend, obviously, Mia. That big discovery as you're going through the basement looking for her. Just a brilliant game all the way around. And I am so stoked for Resident Evil 8 to come off the heels of this game. Definitely reinvigorated the series, in my opinion.
Yep.
So with that as well, moving on over to Justin for number 3.
Number 3. Okay, yeah. Sid Meier's Civilization 6 was my number 3. I've not been a massive Civ player over the years as much as other people, but I picked up Civ 6 I suppose about a year and a half ago or so, and I've got every single DLC since. I absolutely love it. Poured about 400 hours into it, and yeah, for those that don't know, it's a turn-based strategy game, and you control your own civilization, take over the world through one of 4 or 5 different means, whether you're smashing down other civilizations or trying to win a scientific victory by getting to the moon first. It's a great chill game. It's addictive. It's the whole one more turn mechanic, right? You can't put it down. And yeah, for me, it's a top game.
All right, Civ 6. Good to see that making the list. My number 3 is going to be Zelda Breath of the Wild on the Nintendo Switch. For those of you that haven't played this game, whether you're familiar with Zelda or not, I guess to give some recap there, Zelda started off as, really kind of over the top game, just your super old school game from early 90s. The fact that this game has evolved into what it is absolutely mind blowing for me to think of where it was, what it became, and now ultimately what it is in that huge expanded open world. This game gives you so much flexibility to do whatever you want to do. It doesn't hold your hand a whole lot outside of the beginning. You really have to go out there and kind of take this game by the reins and learn what it's all about, learn the mechanics, learn how things work, learn how items, function, things like that. This to me was a really, really impressive Zelda game. And I think it's the best one they've ever made by a mile. I don't know what they're going to do with the rest of that series, but again, Zelda Breath of the Wild, my number 3, absolutely brilliant. Love it. Moving on to the number 2 spot. We're in the top 2 for Wayne.
Okay, sticking with Nintendo then, Mario Odyssey. It's just that Nintendo magic. They make games that just put a smile on my face and just make me want to play and play and play. You mentioned the one more turn thing with Civilization. I got that one more moon thing with Mario Odyssey. I'll just get one. I'll turn it off once I get one more moon, and you get that moon, and you just want to catch another one. Addictive, but in a positive way. Fun, challenging in parts, but still accessible. There's so much to do after you finish the main story. There's something like, I think it's 880 moons, which is insane compared to if you think of something like Mario 64, it had 120 stars, I think. So not replayability, but just the sheer amount of hours you can pour into that game if you want to 100% it. The music in it is something else. There's a little forest world in it, and every now and again, if I'm having a bad day in work, I'll just put on the music from this world, and it's so soothing and excellent. Mario Odyssey, and again, I talk about a lot of games being returned to forms. To me, 3D Super Mario World on the Wii U was just a little disappointing. I hit the credits on that and then just turned it off and didn't play it again. Mario Odyssey, to me, just so much better. The hat mechanic in it is so much fun.
Yeah, controlling that hat is pretty wild. You can do a lot from controlling characters.
It's so deep. Like, even after you've finished it, you go around and you realize there's so many things you can take control of that you didn't realize beforehand. Yeah, fantastic. It's just, as I say, it's Nintendo magic. Their first party titles are exceptionally good.
Yeah, that's another one of those games where I think I'm just talking about Breath of the Wild, from what they were 20, 30 years ago to what it is now, right? How it's just exploded into that huge open world form is incredible, and who knows where it goes from here. So next up, we've got Justin. Take it away.
Another possibly contentious one. Old school RuneScape. Now, I know a lot of people consider that to be somewhat of a remake, but it's not. It started off, Jagex decided to re-release the 2007 version of RuneScape 2. I played a lot of RuneScape 2 from the age of about 8 years old, so it's nostalgic for me. But this time, they decided to let players decide where the game goes. They have in-game polling in the MMORPG, and let players basically vote on what aspects of the game should change, what they should bring in. Here's an idea, do you like it? And I just love that bottom-up, like, give the power to the players kind of aspect for an MMORPG. And they learned from their mistakes. They kept the graphics plain and simple that the graphics players wanted. And it's doing so well. I think from memory, there are actually more people playing old school RuneScape now than there are the current RuneScape 3, which is their newer game. So they're making more money off it. There are some qualms with it. Some bits I'm not so keen on. You can buy physical gold in the game. That's not for me. But a lot of the aspects are just perfect for me. So if you haven't checked it out and you're an old RuneScape player, definitely give it a go.
What a game. Wow. So how did you get into playing that? Because I started playing that, I think, at our, I think I was in like 7th or 8th grade or something. And we would be in our school's like computer lab. Like, hey, can we find a way to get RuneScape running on these things before we get kicked out of here? Or?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think that's for most people how they got into it. I played with my sister when I was about 7, 8 years old and clueless kid. And we used to just run around killing cows and selling cow hides. And like, it was so stupid, but so much fun. Yeah. It's nostalgic, though, I would say.
Number 2 for Justin, RuneScape. That's incredible. All right. Well, we're down to the number 1 spot. I still have one remaining, so I'm assuming one of you have this. But my number 1 can wait for a minute. Wayne, number 1, your favorite game, best game of
my favorite game
generation.
Of this generation is one that I finished very, very recently. There's a little bit of controversy around it, which I think is nonsense, to be honest. But I'll focus on the game itself. It's The Last of Us 2. I absolutely love cinematic single-player games that are story-based and character-based, and nothing in that category delivered the way The Last of Us 2 did. The acting in it is just absolutely top-notch. The writing is superb. The story flips a few things on its head. I don't want to say too much in case people haven't played it. It has you doing things that you wouldn't necessarily want to do, and it invokes emotions in a way that so many games just don't anymore. The gameplay itself, it's okay. No, it's good. It's good. I enjoyed it. I'm not super into stealth myself. I still managed to enjoy it, but it mixes it up so much as the game goes on. The way the game plays evolves and changes. I did try to play it stealthily, but I do get the impression that I could have went in guns blazing and played it that way. So if I chose to, and it's a funny one because I remember finishing The Last of Us, the first game, and thinking, I don't want a sequel. That story has been told, and we don't need any more from it. I think it's the same with some TV shows. I get to the end of season one and go, just leave it there. That was enough. So I wasn't actually fussed on getting a sequel to this, but I'm glad they did. I'm glad they made it. It's absolutely superb if that's the sort of game you're into, and I loved it. Loved it. And it's long as well. It's good value. A lot of games like that, where you've got those really high level production values, you'll only get a 12-hour game or a 16-hour game. Whereas this, I think I hit the 30-hour mark before I finished it. And to have that level of polish in a game, and for it to last 30 hours, I don't see other games doing that. And I honestly think that Naughty Dog, in terms of sort of AAA high budget games, Naughty Dog are the best about, without a doubt.
Absolutely. All right. Well, beautiful. That was my number 4. Yeah, I mean, The Last of Us Part 2 was great. I absolutely loved everything from Ellie. There was the Joel controversy, obviously, as well. I thought Abby was a fantastic character. At first, I wasn't too sure what was going on there, but the way they tied that entire story together over the course of, 20, 30, 40 hours is just absolutely incredible, and really a testament to what Naughty Dog is capable of.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things I love in games is gray morality. Not hate, but I'm not overly fussed on games where here's the good guys, here's the bad guys, end of story. Have the good choice or the bad choice. I like it when things are kind of a little more complex than that, and The Last of Us delivered that in spades.
Absolutely. Justin, did you get a chance to play through it?
I haven't. No, not yet. I plan it. I played the first one. Enjoyed what I got to play of it. I borrowed it off a friend, I think, years ago. But I would love to get back into those franchise and play. It's on my list.
In the backlog.
It's on my list, along with a lot of the games you guys have mentioned today now, I think.
So Last of Us Part 2, spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening right now and you haven't played this game and you want to save yourself, now is your time to pause or turn away or skip for the next 2 minutes. But Wayne, what did you think about that ending? Because that has absolutely torn people apart. I guess there were 2 parts of that game, really, maybe even more than 2 that tore people apart in that game. One of those being obviously the death of Joel, which was, strange to see in general. I don't know if it's just the fact that it happened or the positioning of it in the game happening so early on. And then 2, what did you think about the ending between Ellie and Abby, with her getting the opportunity to just walk away after all of that?
Okay, number 1, the death of Joel. Okay, loads and loads of people were really angry about that. That is testament to how well crafted those characters are. If a character dies and you're pissed off, that means they've created a fictional character that you care about. That's not easy to do. Try writing. It ain't easy, and they've managed to pull that off. The way in which some fans reacted, I thought, was quite frankly childish. You're not entitled to have these characters live forever. If a writer chooses to kill a character, you got to roll with it. You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to emotionally react. But, and I know I'm talking about extremes here, but don't take to the internet and start throwing out death threats. You're a child if you do that. Okay.
Yeah.
The last bit at the end, to me, it made sense. And again, it's down to that gray morality thing. It's that realization of, I'm not necessarily the good guy. That's not necessarily the bad guy. Everyone's got a narrative. And I think that's what the game was about. The fact that, you're seeing life through your eyes, your narrative. There's other people and they've got their narrative. And when you start to open your eyes and experience different people's narrative and see what they're seeing, it's not as simple as we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. And you can take what I'm saying and kind of project that onto other things if you choose to. But to me, that's what those final scenes said to me, and I think it made a lot of sense. Like, there's a lot of people, they've got a very black and white view, and so when something plays out the way it played out in that game, they can't quite grasp the reasons for it. In their eyes, it's like that person was the good guy and that person was the bad guy, so such and such should have killed such and such. Life ain't that simple or black and white, and that's what the game was saying, or that's what I took from it anyway.
What a reasonable and neutral perspective, ladies and gentlemen, because I will say I have not seen a story-related controversy like that, like this one in The Last of Us Part 2 since probably the ending of Mass Effect 3,
Mhm.
which tore a lot of people apart as well. This to me was just absolutely insane to see what followed, whether it was on the Facebooks, Reddits,
Yeah.
just general reactions to it. But
So I think the end of Mass Effect 3, the criticisms towards that was very different because it was so game mechanic based.
right.
Everything was decision based, and then we got to the end of the game, and your decisions don't matter.
Yep.
You know, and that was frustrating to
Yeah.
say the least.
And then that magnitude too of just controversy again, you hardly see it, but I guess it does mean a testament to how much people care about this game and these characters.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But again, Last of Us Part 2, that was my number 4. I just absolutely loved it. What a brilliant game. And so I know we're kind of crunched on time here, but feel free to take your time talking about it. So we've got number 1 for Justin.
Okay, that was a great segue for me to go into my number 1. And it's funny to see that Wayne's game's so different for his like top 9, and then my games are super different. My number 1 is Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. Another Naughty Dog game, very different Naughty Dog game, but just I'm massive fan of the Uncharted series as it is, but Uncharted 4 just took the edge. It has a great campaign, story, cinematic, narrative, great characters for me. Probably not the level, like not to the extent that The Last of Us, right, would have, and the level of controversy is certainly not there in the storyline. But just a lot of fun. I do enjoy the cover-based shooter, and I love the historical artifact, like Indiana Jones vibe that Uncharted has. Just for me, is epic, and as someone that creates environments for what I do in 3D art, it's just like walking through a cave and just seeing these huge statues and just unfold before me it's top for me. Like it's as good as it gets. And then you have the multiplayer, and I've probably put I wouldn't like to say how many hours into the multiplayer. I still play it. Like last weekend, I was chilling on there. Like the multiplayer play base is still active. I mean, it came out in 2016 now, May 2016 or something, and there's still a huge amount of people playing it. I never struggled to find a game, which for me is really important, obviously, with the multiplayer. And yeah, it's a great one to jump into again and not have to spend a lot of time grinding on. You can just jump in, play it every so often, for a few hours every evening. The multiplayer mechanics are great. Being able to swing on ropes and shoot people, and with the whole vibe it's got, is just, yeah, it's top for me. But yeah, it's just a great segue going into what you said about Naughty Dog, and the level of quality they have for AAA it is above the rest. It really is. It just, yeah.
Absolutely. Uncharted 4, I absolutely loved that game as well. Thought it was borderline masterpiece after, 1, 2, and 3 already set the bar so high. And, Naughty Dog, again, living up to those expectations. I don't know how they do it, but.
Me neither. It's crazy, isn't it?
So I'll move on to my number 1 here, and that is going to be The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt. Absolutely phenomenal game. I don't think a game has hooked me this way probably in decades, to be honest. Since I was a kid. I mean, the character development in this game, the way that they introduce new aspects to it constantly throughout, the quests, the storytelling, the small little niche details that we've come to expect here in the last 5 years. I think a lot of it really came from The Witcher. Arguably probably my favorite game of all time. Even I'll take it up a notch there, from favorite game of this generation to favorite game of all time. I thought it hit it. Yeah. I hit it right out of the park with that, I guess, because I loved the main story. I loved the DLC we got after with Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine. I thought those were 2 of the best pieces of DLC I've ever seen for a game. Not just for their breadth and how big they were, but their depth. They were huge. This could have been a standalone game on its own, and they could have just repackaged these 2 pieces of DLC and said, "Hey, here's The Witcher 4, have at it." But they were absolutely massive. I credit this game to a lot of the hype train that you're seeing right now for Cyberpunk 2077. I think a lot of that's coming from people that played The Witcher and have seen the amount of quality work that they've put out at CD Projekt Red. introducing us to characters like Geralt of Rivia, Yennefer, Triss, so many different series, so many different people in that game, and so many favorites, whether it's inspiring cosplay, other things like that as well. I think we even got some crossover stuff in games like Soul Calibur where Geralt made an appearance, but just larger than life, great characters, incredible storytelling. I can't even get into the Witcher story because I've put like 400 hours into this game, across, I'm sure, Xbox and PC, but one of the best by far for me. And again, I'll throw it out there as my favorite of all time. Wonderful game.
I didn't like it.
Yeah, what? Wait. How could you? What?
Man, why to shoot him down like that?
Good God. What?
I got 10 hours into it and I couldn't find any missions that were the same level that I was at, and I just threw the head up and gave up.
What the hell is wrong with you? What?
I have no idea. I know. I think there's me and about 3 other people on this planet that didn't like Witcher 3. I will give another shot. I will definitely give another shot. I've heard that it's going to look even better again on the Series X. So I think that's my incentive to give it another chance.
Wow. How about that? Hot take alert. Man, I'm hurt. I don't know how to physically respond to that. My chest hurts.
By the way, I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm not saying it's a bad game. There was just 1 or 2 wee things that kind of threw me enough to make me go, I don't want to play this anymore. But as I say, it'll definitely get a second chance.
Hopefully you do. And again, with this game, it's accessible. You don't have to play The Witcher 1 and 2. It certainly benefits the story.
True.
But yeah, I mean, you can just jump right into it if you're someone that hasn't played The Witcher 1 or 2. But those are great games as well. So hopefully you get the chance, Wayne, for the redemption arc on there, and we can talk about that in a future podcast episode of Wayne's redemption and recovery from not enjoying The Witcher 3.
We could actually. There's been a bunch of games that I have played, not liked, and then went back to after a period of time and really, really enjoyed. In fact, some of my favorite games would fall into that category. So that's something we could chat about at some stage.
I am making it my personal mission to rehabilitate you and bring you back into the wild as a fan of The Witcher 3. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, that was our top 10 of this generation. We've got a few more questions to go over here and maybe a couple more talking points to discuss because I know we're running over on time. But with that, for you two, were there any characters for you that stood out in this generation as probably being, the most compelling, or your favorite characters that you'd like to see cross over into the next generation a month from now?
Yeah, actually, one from a game that we haven't mentioned or was on my honorable mentions, the Jedi from Jedi Fallen Order. That game may have been further up my list, except I haven't finised it yet.
It's the redhead guy, right? I forget his name.
It is, yeah. He's the guy that acted as the Joker in the Gotham TV series, and he's been in a couple of shows that I haven't watched, possibly Trailer Park Boys or something like that.
Greatest show ever.
Yeah.
If you guys have not seen Trailer Park Boys, please stop what you are doing. Get to Netflix. Check out all 13 seasons of Trailer Park Boys immediately.
I really liked him, and I think a big Star Wars fan as well. And the Jedis, I'm really, really interested in Jedis that survived Order 66. So he kind of falls into that little pocket of characters that I'm really interested in. Especially, I think it's a tricky thing to fit into the lore, considering so much of it's already written. So yeah, definitely love to see more of him. I'm saying I'd love to see more of him, and I didn't finish the game. Someone's probably watching this going, he died. But I don't know if he did or not. I hope not.
What about you, Justin? Any characters that stood out?
I mean, from the number one, and I guess spoilers ahead as well if you haven't played Uncharted 4, the ending. There is his daughter at the end. And as someone who clearly loves the Uncharted franchise, I want it to continue. I want them to bring it back to Uncharted 5, and I'm semi-confident they will eventually, just because of how big the franchise is. But he does have a daughter, and I think that would be a very easy way of bringing the franchise back, whether this generation or to the mid to the end of next generation would probably more suit it. But if anything, just to kick off the franchise. But I think her character has a lot of potential too. So
that'd be an interesting one, though. It means that Naughty Dog, both Naughty Dog's big franchises will both be female led.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very true. And still
Absolutely.
great games as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just realized something. I forgot to even mention my number 2, gentlemen. So
No.
I hate to play around here. My gosh, I got it confused up with like the 4 and 6 that I deferred on. But mine was God of War. In case anybody was wondering or caught that I missed it. But absolutely love it. And that's going to tie into my most compelling character of this generation. I think is Kratos. Boy. I don't know if I did that justice there, but
Boy.
boy. So that was just absolutely incredible. A great character, his son as well. It'll be interesting to see where that franchise goes with Ragnarok in the next gen.
Kratos is one of my favorite characters of all times, and I was disgusted what they'd done with him in that game.
How dare you? I mean, he's everything I'm not. Like he's got muscles, he's like got a good voice. Like it's the complete opposite of me.
It ties into what we were talking about with Joel from The Last of Us 2. If they change something about a character and it really, really gets to you, it just shows how much you care about that character, how much you're invested, and that is the strength of the writing, you know? So although I didn't like what they done with the character, i.e. making him a bit of a grumpy father figure, you know, to me he's 100% through and through badass. That's what he's always been. And now he's like this guy that's chasing after a kid going, oh, please come back. Please come back. You know, it sort of ruined that character a little bit for me. But as I say, that's the strength of having good characters in the first place, you know? There's 2 edges to that.
Absolutely. And I'm sure there's a lot of fathers out there that resonated with that game a lot. I remember when it came out, that was a lot of the feedback was, you know, hey, as a father, I absolutely love this game. I can't relate. But certainly, you know, it was emotional a lot of times.
Gotcha.
So last question here for me, for both of you. If you had to pick one winner of this generation, whether it be PC, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, pick one winner of this generation, who you got?
Wow, what a question.
I think it's obvious for me. Like I said right at the start, I'm an Xbox gamer. If a game comes out multi-platform, I'm getting an Xbox. 80% of my gaming is on Xbox. But if you clock it up, those top 10 that I delivered, 6 PlayStation exclusives. I think it was 1 Switch exclusive and 3 multi-platform games. Not a single Xbox exclusive on there. It's all PlayStation. PlayStation were without a doubt the winners for me this generation, and it's because of those exclusive games. And we talked about the figures at the start. I didn't want to mention it then, but that's why there's 115 million PlayStation 4s out there, because of those games.
Absolutely. Justin.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on there. Just the fact that both of our games, not only Naughty Dog, our top ones, you know, both PS4 exclusives, and like I think PS4 wins it for me between Xbox and PS4, but a lot of my list was PC games. I find it hard. I don't tend to sort of compare PC with Xbox with PS4. It tends to be, you know, PlayStation, then Microsoft, and then, you know, the PC kind of aspect is kind of on the sidelines in some ways. It's just kind of there. A lot of my games that I play, I do primarily spend most of my time on my PC, both working and playing games. So it kind of, for me, that's the obvious choice. But yeah, the exclusive on PlayStation, with that whole debate between the two, is definitely PlayStation for me. And I wouldn't be surprised if, I think it'll be closer next generation, but I wouldn't be surprised if PlayStation managed that again next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess for me to answer that question, kind of the same boat as Justin, you know, PC for me, just because there's so many games on there. I love playing, like the Total War Warhammer 2 series, you know, being able to clash huge armies into each other. And there's just so many different elements with a mouse and a keyboard that you don't get on console. But if I had to pick a console, I would definitely say PlayStation. Same in line with you guys. Just too many, you know, top-notch exclusives. You know, they have yet to disappoint, I think, with a first party title at all, in any way, shape, or form. So it should be interesting to see where that takes them into the future. The next gen, again, is about a month away. It's going to be exciting to see where these two shake up, and we're looking forward to it. So, gentlemen, any famous last words before we close off today and take it home?
I will be very brief on this. I wanted to talk about a few letdowns, personally speaking. But as I say, I'll be super quick about this. Gears 4 and 5, compared to the original one,
Garbage.
The original trilogy has just taken an absolute nosedive. We used to have these big, chunky characters, and they got a lot of grief for being, like stereotypes. But I think those characters genuinely did have heart. There's a scene with Dom from Gears 3, and I will admit I cried during it. Gears 4 and 5, they tried to make it more relatable characters, and I think they fell flat in their face. I do not care about any of the characters in Gears 4 and 5. I've pretty much lost interest in the franchise as a whole.
Yeah, same for me. Gears for me is always going to be Marcus Phoenix, and that's it. Like there will be no changing that.
Mass Effect Andromeda. All I need to do is say those 3 words, and you know exactly what I'm thinking. Just a franchise that has completely lost itself. The original Mass Effect trilogy, 3 of the best games ever made. That trilogy is up there with Star Wars and Back to the Future and all the greatest trilogies of all time. And Mass Effect Andromeda was just an embarrassment. It really was. I don't know what they were thinking. And then it was on your top 10, Anthony. Sorry, Tony. Red Dead Redemption 2 was a chore as far as I was concerned.
How dare you?
I found it incredibly boring from start to finish. And I only finished it to get it ticked off the list and walk away from it.
He's slaughtering you today, Anthony. Like
Absolutely.
The Witcher, now Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah, ruthless, man.
Witcher 3's all on me. That's my fault. But Red Dead Redemption, oh man, I just wanted it to be over.
God, Wayne. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it is my duty and a responsibility to make sure I rehabilitate Wayne and get him back into the wild, enjoying Red Dead Redemption 2 and The Witcher 3 in that order.
Witcher 3 is a high possibility. Red Dead Redemption I will never touch again.
How dare you?
Wow.
Awful game.
Wow.
I'm starting to sweat a bit here. You know?
Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah.
Well,
tick that, the comments section.
I guess with that too, I'd be curious to know. And again, sorry to change this up here, but my last question: are there any games or series or franchises that were absent in this generation that you would love to see make a comeback or just a surprise appearance out of nowhere this generation? I'll say for me, Burnout, that entire arcade racing series.
Good one. Yeah,
yep, I would love to see. I loved 1, 2, 3 Takedown. I loved Revenge Paradise. But we didn't get a Burnout in the last 7 or 8 years. What the hell is that? EA?
My God,
Please.
yeah. What are you doing? Yeah, Burnout Paradise was a fantastic game. We were playing that years ago with friends, and that was just such a great game.
It's
really
so
was.
good, and I can't believe they haven't followed up on it. Maybe it's because Need for Speed has been putting the dirt on them. I really don't know. I understand it sold well, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But bring Criterion back to Burnout. The second thing I would really like to see make a comeback is Fable. I know we did get a small teaser trailer for that a couple months ago from Microsoft. But again, I would love to see that RPG series make a comeback on the Xbox. I think that would be a console mover for sure. And whatever they need to do to bring that back, please do it.
If Peter Molyneux's not involved, count me in.
Fair enough.
That man's a nightmare. I'm going to be really obvious with my answer. Half-Life 3.
Well, the story continues. I mean, we may never. Yeah. Okay. So Valve. Yeah, that's a good point. I completely missed him. Left 4 Dead 3, Portal 3.
I was going to say Portal
Half-Life
as well.
3. Yeah. Well, where are the 3s, Valve? Please, next generation, whether it be console or PC, give us the 3s. We're begging you.
Mm-hmm.
I may not live long enough to see Half-Life 3. That's my biggest concern.
No, we won't. But you have the Alex. I haven't played it, but I looked at the gameplay, and I haven't played any real VR games yet, but that makes me want to play. That really does make me want to play and get into that side of things.
Yep, absolutely. And Justin, any wish list items for you as well?
You hit the nail on the head. I had Fable saved, and then you said it, and I was like, damn. But yeah, Fable. Like, if I love Fable 2, Fable 3 wasn't as good for me. And when I had my Xbox 360 and Fable 2 was just such a good game for me. So I'd love to see the Fable 4 coming out, and pretty sure hopefully it will be. But we'll have to watch this space.
Absolutely. You are not kidding. Well, ladies and gentlemen,
sorry, one other one before we go. Dead Space. Give me more Dead Space, please.
And I think we're going to chat on that a little bit here, probably.
Definitely.
Next week's episode of the pod, because, ladies and gentlemen, we have the spooky Spooktober edition coming up, where we're going to bring up some horror games from past, present, and future and talk about that. So please keep an eye on this channel. I think you're going to enjoy that conversation as well. If you enjoyed today's conversation as well, which we hope you did, breaking down our top 10, thank you very much. Please be sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment somewhere below, leave a review if you can as well. That helps us out so much here getting started. Thank you very much. If you want to send us some fan mail as well, feel free to send that over to gamesaverschannel@gmail.com. You can follow us on all the social media channels at facebook.com/gamesaverschannel, youtube.com/gamesaverschannel, twitter.com/gamesaverschannel. You can also find us on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Again, if you have any suggestions, comments, anything like that, feel free to send that to us in an email, on social media. Any guest recommendations, episode recommendations, we'd love to hear it. Again, next week we've got the Halloween special lined up and the next gen preview episode coming up the week before these new consoles come out in the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 shortly thereafter. So be sure to stick around for that. Don't forget to save your game. That's all we've got today. We'll see you next time.